Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And technology continues to be a problem. I was just chatting in the green room about my operator headspace and timing. That's an old veteran thing we could talk about some other time, but it has to do with a machine gun, just so you know, and how I was screwing that up. And you know, folks, what y'all don't ever see is the Camden looking like somebody who just got out of bed, bouncing from computer screen to computer screen right before we get on the show. Camden, do you think you'll ever get that down to where it's a better, more flow system, or is
No,
that your
no,
flow?
that is my flow. I come in here about 9:55, 5 minutes before the recording, get the computer on, switch the screens over, all that stuff. I'm all set. Don't fix it if it ain't broken.
All right, all right. Well, what brought this up, folks, was our great guest Chase Minnifield, who is having some same problems that I had, but not quite as bad. His wasn't operator headspace, so at least he didn't admit it was. Chase, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Man, I am too. I'm excited about it. You know, I love talking with athletes because there's the parallels. Most folks that haven't done what lived the life that you lived as an athlete and lived the life that I lived as a career soldier don't understand this parallel universe that we lived in.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'd love to man, I was thinking about 6 or 7 different questions, but I got to settle on one to get us
Gotta
started.
pick one.
I know. Where did the entrepreneur sense? Because just as a folks NFL, if you haven't read the bio, a team player, as an entrepreneur, you step away from the team. How did that come to be? How'd you get comfortable with that?
Yeah. So I actually talked about this not recently with a person that was looking to invest in my company, and they said I graded as an alpha, and they don't really get too many alpha grades when they do like personality tests. So they were very interested in me from a founder standpoint, from that perspective. And I always thought that it may just be football, but I played a position that was very independent. I played a cornerback, and if anybody knows about cornerback, you have these. Revis Island was kind of my guy that I watched growing up, and Deion Sanders and my dad. He played. He was a man-to-man corner. So I prided myself on being able to be independent and not need assistance or help on a task. So that was kind of my thing, and I thought it was very important. I trained like a boxer. I try to take a lot of boxer style trainings when I was training myself. I take a lot of military style trainings when I'm training myself, because there's a lot of mental when it comes to being able to withstand or take on challenges where it's just dependent on yourself. And that's one thing that I always thought was in entrepreneurship. And just to answer the question, I guess I was in the NFL, and I was like, I got cut, and I was training hard, and I was ready to come back, and I'm like, surely somebody needs a 6'4", 4'8" corner. You know what I'm saying? 6 foot. 4,
of course they do.
Yeah,
of course they do.
Yeah. Somebody needs a corner like this. Somebody needs a shutdown corner out there, and nobody called, and I realized that I needed to take my destiny into my own hands, and I realized that I felt like it was lost when my work wasn't paying off, when I wasn't seeing the fruits of my labor, and I decided that the best way for me to see the fruits of my labor, I want to put myself in a position where I fail or I succeed based on what I put into it, and that's where that came from.
Where did you, or you kind of talk about like that little bit of like the loss of identity, that comes with, hanging up the cleats. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about what made you go towards entrepreneurship? Because I can picture a lot of other guys in that position doubling down, in the gym for the next 2 years trying to get another spot.
Yeah.
You were probably making the smarter choice and said, all right, this chapter's done. What's next?
Yeah, well, I tore my Achilles, so I think I was forced to.
That'll do it. Yeah.
That was a clear tear. That was a clear tear right there. But the crazy thing about it in my story, I did have that little period, like a year and a half, where I was training super hard, and I got an opportunity to go play in Canada. And I didn't really think I was a CFL type of guy, but I was like, all right, let me go dominate CFL. I'll come right back to the NFL. And I don't think there's too many. There's people that go from the CFL straight to the NFL. There's very few people that go from the NFL to the CFL back to the NFL in that standpoint. But that was my journey that I was about to embark on. And I tore my Achilles in Canada. And I was like, it was a preseason game 1. And I was like, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing from that standpoint. I had started to dibble and dabble in like starting a business, had some contracts and things of that nature at that point. But that took me full-fledged of straddling that line over here to this side of the fence. So, I think it really just came down to, one, that injury really forced me into it, but also I just didn't want nobody to be in charge of that decision again, of me saying like, hey, I don't have a job.
Was that the first time you had a little sense of the entrepreneurship, or did you have a lemonade stand, or were you that kid that sold the candy bars in high school, or what?
Nah, I wasn't that guy. But my dad, he has an entrepreneur. My dad had his own business, so I did see it from his standpoint. And I did like a little bit of entrepreneurship. I think me and my cousin, we went and shoveled some snow for like $20, and after that was over, I was like, yeah, we're gonna hold off on this, and it's too cold for 20. It's too cold for 20 out here. So that was like a little taste of it. We always, we're trying to figure out different ways to do different things. Like we've done the lemonade stands and stuff like that. But as far as seeing me running my business, that wasn't necessarily something I knew I could probably do it if I wanted to, but it wasn't something that was one of my goals. I wouldn't say it was a goal.
How'd you settle on what you ended up doing? Because I work with a lot of people, veterans, folks that listen to the show all the time know this, that I work with veterans in transition. And there's a handful, I would say it's about 50-50, that'll say, I'm starting a business that does this, solves this problem.
Yeah.
Others will just say, I want to be like you did. I don't want anybody to control my destiny. Mm-hmm. I want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So I didn't really care what I did, honestly. That was my main thing right out the gate, was like, I would rather have my independence, feeling like I would have my time. I could encourage my results. I had direct reflection on my results. That's what was most important to me. What I was doing didn't really matter. So where I started at was like, I was at the University of Kentucky. I was in Lexington, Kentucky. That's where I'm from. And I remembered that move-in day was a struggle. And I was trying to find something that didn't necessarily take a lot of I need some blue collar opportunities, right? Not no white collar opportunities. So I decided I could always like gear together some work, some people that could help work from that standpoint. So move-in days was where I started at originally, right out of the NFL. I started a company called Helping Hands, and we helped move-in days at the University of Kentucky, just like bringing like 6 or 10 guys. We come out there, we help the kids move in and go from there. We did a good enough job where University of Kentucky was like, hey, we don't budget for this, but we like your staff. We like your team. You guys are friendly. You guys are good helpers. Can you guys help us next year before move-in day to get the rooms ready for move-in day? So like there's this big industry. I never even thought about this, but kids move out. All the kids move out. And then after all the kids move out, there's this big amount of work to get these rooms back ready for move-in day, to say the least. But everything from maintenance to trash out to cleaning to painting, and it's basically all hands on deck during that time frame. And they budget a lot of money to make sure when the parents show up that next school year that it looks like it was the first day anybody's ever lived there, right? So
lots of coats of paint, right?
Exactly. So that's where I kind of focused. That's where I first had my first real success in entrepreneurship, was in that space. And I started that company, and we scaled it across the country. I used actually a lot of former teammates, and I try to do it on every campus as much as possible. We were what we would call a student housing turn services company. And that's where I started at. Now I've got a technology company that's geared around making that better. But that's initially where everything started.
Did you hit your stride like right away? Because there's a lot of similarities between, leadership and business leadership on the field. Yeah. And so I could see you getting in there and the leadership component came and you could help get the guys moving and all that kind of stuff. Did you hit your stride right away on that? Or was there an adjustment?
There was definitely adjustment. One thing I did know that I was doing something that if I needed to do it, I could do it. It wasn't something that I was incapable of doing if I needed to do it myself. So, I just had to find the right people. And what I realized is that like most of these people that were getting these jobs were looking for jobs for a reason. And, they were there for their checks, not necessarily there for the brand, the business, anything like that. So there was a big difference between personnel was a big problem for us as far as like people that represented the company, how I would represent the company if I was there. So that was one of the things that we struggle with in scaling. But as far as from a leadership standpoint and being able to rally the troops and tackle tough tasks, we do that naturally.
Could you talk a little bit on that leadership side? And because what that sounds like to me is like there's an interesting thing, and Dad, the same thing you always talk about in the military as well, where it's like you have everybody going towards this goal.
Yeah.
Like U of A rugby training camp starting up. We're all going for a national championship.
Yeah.
Everyone knows what the goal is there, so we're all working towards it. So it's really easy to get somebody on track there. How did you find your way of painting that vision for them so they could get more motivated, so they could, tie their paycheck to a vision rather than just the paycheck?
And I think where that really focused on was how I scaled, and I was like able to convince my teammates to like get their crews together in their areas. So that's where I really focused on that opportunity. But like I said, we're all pulling in the same direction. We're all winning and losing together. I think that you have to have sometimes I've been accused of being a little bit of too much of a tough leader, I would say. But I only know from my experience, right? I can't pull from any other experience. And all I know is that it's a product driven, it's a results driven business, right? In the football. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, if you aren't going in that direction, if you're causing us to struggle to get to that direction, then I have to be quick to make decisions to lighten the load and find somebody else in that space. And there's one thing I always tell my team, and that is that I learned in the NFL is that even on Tuesday, somebody is out there working out for Tom Brady's job or Aaron Rodgers' job. Like the people who have the big Patrick Mahomes job, like they're still out there. Somebody's out there trying out for that position. And if the NFL is consistently recruiting and consistently looking at people, why wouldn't I, as a business owner, from that standpoint, right? So that's one thing that we try to do well. Is I always tell them, like, just because we have some good people in play doesn't mean that we shouldn't be taking a look at if there is better.
So your on-field leadership style, this is a two-part question, because sometimes, I remember when I was playing ball, you had those guys that were the rah, jump up and down, and I was never that guy, still not. Camden will tell you my coaching style was not like that ever. Or were you the guy, kind of the quiet guy that said, all right, guys, let's bring it in here? Because depending on that style, how does that leadership style transfer into business?
Yeah. I would say I was kind of the quieter guy. I was a good follower when I wasn't the leader. When there was the seniors and the older guys on the team, and it wasn't my time to lead, I was a good follower type situation. But I also was a good somebody that learned and watched as other people led. And when you learn and watch as other people lead, you learn when it's your time to lead how to operate at a high magnitude. So when it is my time to lead, I would say I'm more vocal. I'm not necessarily a rah guy, but when I have people's ears, I make sure that I'm delivering, not wasting their time on messages, if that makes sense. So that's how I would say my leadership style is delivering purposeful messages. And I would say my strength is probably allowing for somebody who may be a C-level player to perform at probably a B or A type of situation based on the belief. I think there's a strong way to pull people to a higher level when they understand that you believe in their capabilities.
So did you have to shift it very much? One of the things that I talk with my veteran clients about a lot is that they know how to do it, but they got to change how they speak it, right? Quite literally, I use the example of going to a foreign country and a new culture and a language. Have you found a similar aspect in and shifting to becoming, a business founder in that sense?
Yeah, you can't. I can't speak. I got to find different ways to communicate. 100%. Sometimes I'll say things. I quickly learn that my level of aggression or my level of what I would consider physicality on a football field, or the way that we see things as being humane, may seem unhumane to somebody else in that aspect of doing things. And I had to really understand there's different ways. Like the messages that I receive well is not the same way somebody else receives messages well. And that's a fine line that I still told to this day of trying to understand how much can I actually really push some people that haven't had the same life experiences that I may have had.
Mm-hmm. Talking about leadership, it's funny, going back to, it's like when you're in a team setting, especially in sports, everyone's going towards that same goal.
Yeah.
From the leadership component, it's really easy to step away and be that second voice, being that first follower, whatever term you want to put on it, because it's like, everyone's going that direction. In business, I've had this happen to me several times. I'm sure you have too, Chase, where it's like, this is my baby. I built this all up. And then somebody wants to step up as a leader. And it's a little bit of like a pride component that you don't want to let that happen.
Yeah.
Could you talk us through a story maybe of like when that happened with you, somebody in the team stepping up and you almost had to swallow that pride and not just push it back down?
Oh yeah. So one of my co-founders, after I started my company that I was doing the moving the services, I created a tech company called EZOS. And my co-founder for that company, he's a veteran. Lincoln, and I've always been very hesitant on like who my co-founders and my partners are that I'm working with. Like with Helping Hands, it was all my teammates, like former athletes. I know exactly what I'm gonna get. And with Lincoln, I was like, I think I'm gonna take a chance on you because I understood his background. Because at the end of the day, I just want somebody that's in the foxhole with me that's not gonna fold on tough situations. But so he has that similar mindset to me from that standpoint, and he's a talker. He's going to definitely got things to say. So we had a sales pitch. This is like our first sales pitch ever. We got an opportunity to go down to North Carolina, UNC Charlotte. So we're traveling down to Charlotte. This is my first time. This is our first time going to an in-person presentation. We've created a product. It's not even live yet, so we're just pitching off of like, this is what it's going to do. This is what it's going to do. This is what it's going to look like, and all these different type of things. We don't even have nothing to really show. It's just a slideshow. And we go down there, and I'm thinking, I'm ready to go lead this presentation, close this deal, close the sale. Like I'm like a shark in the water. But essentially, he is. We've never done this before, and what I realized is that he's a shark as well. You know what I'm saying? He's a shark as well, and I had to understand that I have to let him talk. Wow, because if I want to talk and he wants to talk and we're talking over each other, it's looking as an unorganized front from that standpoint. So in that meeting, I'm trying to get my point across, he's trying to get his point across, and we're talking over each other. Somebody asks a question, we both answer it, that type of situation. And I'm like, all right, you got this one, I got this one. It was definitely a push and pull from the top. And what I really understood as a leader is that it's not my job to do everything. It's my job to put people in position that can do things to the level that you would do things. And what I learned in that aspect was that I could let him go, and he could take on things. So I barely say anything. If you see me on a sales call now, I don't say anything, and that's very different than like my previous, like how I did things. Like I go in there, I close the deals, I get the money, and then we go from there. But yeah, that's one situation where we still haven't got that contract to this day, is because it was that bad of a presentation.
Could you talk a little bit on that about, like swallowing the pride, and then now you're not doing that. Could you talk about that? Loss of identity is what's coming to mind because we're talking about the transition. Not necessarily truly a loss of identity, but it's like your source of confidence, almost like you're saying, like I close the deals, like I'm Chase, I close the deals, and now you're not. You're still the founder. You have to like remind yourself you're the founder and all these things. Like, I'm still in charge. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because that's a tricky headspace to be in.
Definitely, it definitely is. I think you got to know when to play your cards. Right, you got to know when to hold and when to fold. From that standpoint, and what I learned is that you you delegate where you need to delegate at, as far as from the perspective of, if somebody is there and they can fully swim on their own, you don't need to be swimming next to them. If somebody is there and they need some assistance, that's where you need to be putting your time at. So really being a CEO and the founder is not necessarily having to close the deals. It's having to say, how do you put the best team in position in place to make us as efficient as possible to get to the goal, right? So if I got to fill in accounting, or if I got to fill in marketing, or if I got to do this from a sales perspective, whatever that is where I need to cover the gaps in the team. So that's why I think a good CEO does. A good CEO is they cover the gaps from the perspective of the goal and making sure we're moving as efficient as possible.
Who would you say is maybe, I'll just call it like I'm thinking it, but like your leadership model, who was that guy, gal, whether, a coach or whoever, that you say, man, that's the leadership style I want to be.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Evergood Adventure Wines. Our loyal listeners know Evergood's founder, Matthew Hexter, from his appearances on the show that never disappointed, and don't worry, Evergood Adventure Wines doesn't disappoint either. Evergood is a craft winery from Colorado that makes wine from lemons, not grapes. Picture adult lemonades perfect for your next backyard barbecue or hanging out with friends at the beach or the pool. No need to drink a warm red grape wine when it's 100 degrees out or hotter here in Tucson. Evergood over ice is the perfect refreshment for a hot summer day. They come in a variety of flavors, including lemon, strawberry, lime, grapefruit, and watermelon. These non-carbonated wines check all the boxes: gluten-free, vegan, low sugar, and low in sulfites. Best of all, they taste damn good, and they have fun names, like their OG lemon wine called Skierpy. Yeah, you heard that right. And I'll tell you, Skierpy is one of my favorites. Evergood ships to 41 states, so you can order your lemon wines online at evergoodadventurewines.com. Plus, Matthew is offering 20% off for our listeners. Just use promo code CAM-OTIS at checkout to get 20% off and start enjoying these amazing lemon wines. Go to evergoodadventurewines.com or click the link in the description below and click buy now to redeem your Cam and Otis Show exclusive.
Well, I think it's a lot of my coaches, honestly. I think it's a lot of my coaches. My dad was my coach for most of my career coming up, and we have stories about that forever. Like, the ones that everyone loves is the fact that we were late to practice. And I have to go get dressed for practice, and as soon as I come out, he says, "All right, run for being late." So, and he was my ride, that guy. So he's that type of coach, right? Where everyone gets treated the same regardless of the situation. But I learned a lot from him as far as with preparation and understanding that you can't expect success without preparation. I learned a lot from my college coach, Al Groh, who came underneath the Belichick tree, and a couple other different guys like that. And, what I really learned from Coach Groh was that, you have to be all in on whatever it is that you're going after. Halfway commitment doesn't work. That's from the small details to the big details. Like, he used to say that, if you're on time, you're late. And that's always stuck out to me forever. It's just like, even with my team now. So if my team watching this, like, I notice when you're late, you know what I'm saying? Like that type of situation. But I think that's one of the most important things that you can do is just show that you are ready for whatever is to come. And that should be, in my mind, 5 minutes early. So I was late to this meeting, but it was a technology issue.
It's different. Talking about like the leadership development and there's like those sources there. You mentioned in your football career you would cross train. I'd be interested to hear how you applied that to business, because in sports it's such an interesting thing. I'm always comparing things to rugby, trying to figure out different ways to teach things you can learn. Who is it? I heard this interview once with the wide receiver coach that was talking about watching Allen Iverson crossovers to try to figure out how to get off the line faster. Yeah. So like you can always learn so much from other sports. Business, it gets a little bit trickier. Not everyone tries to do it. How do you cross-train in business?
Well, for me, anytime I train, I'm always training my mind. Like, I'm always training my mind. And I personally think that boxers push themselves the farther. I think that Marines and the people in the Army, they push their minds the farthest. And that's what I think is the best thing you can do. Like, I'm not necessarily a big believer in the show muscles or anything like that, right? Like, it comes down to how mentally strong you are in everything, in my mind, how mentally strong you are. And if you can find a way to push your comfort zone further and further, that's really when you start training yourself. Is putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations. So that's the reason why I did cross training, was because I wanted to understand that I had to be mentally strong enough in any situation that came up to trust myself. It wasn't necessarily that I needed to trust everybody else, but I needed to be able to trust myself. And when I could trust myself and have the belief in myself that no matter what happens out there, I could perform, then no matter what happened out there, I was going to be prepared for it. So yeah, that's what I've kind of focused on.
How do you do that? Like, give us some examples. You know,
So,
is that reading books, like, you know, with, you know, Army generals, those kind of things?
It's not
you going
really
out in the woods for a month at a time? Like, what are we talking
about? Stuff like that. Like, really putting yourself in uncomfortable situations that the normal wouldn't do is what I would call it. So if you are like, just specifically like in college, like I would do things like push cars, things of that nature. Like, that's just out unnormal thought processes of doing things. So it can be different in any industry. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you may be doing. But I would say if 95% of the world is doing it or is trying to do it that way, you probably need to try to think of something different from that perspective. And I know one thing that really stood out to me in college was one day it was snowing and I was going to go take the day off. And I decided that, I'm not going to take the day off because I knew everybody else was taking the day off. And in that process, I went and shoveled the field to do my runs from that perspective. And after that day, that's the only thing I did that day. But after that day, I was just like, these are the things that actually separates you from the competition, is when when you find the things that nobody else is willing to do and you do those things. So whatever that may be, you would only know. But, you know, really putting yourself in those environments is what I would say, Camden.
That's such a powerful thing, but it also reminds me of a problem that most of us entrepreneurs deal with on a daily basis, and that's the shiny object syndrome. Because if you want to do something, you know that you should do something different and make yourself uncomfortable and stand out. But how do you keep from chasing that next, well, let me try this. Well, I shoveled the field today, and now I need to dig a hole tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. I think it's like, you got a feeling about it type situation. I think that, I definitely might have the shiny object syndrome. Like, I've never been somebody that just really focused on one thing, and I hear that a lot, from that perspective. Like, I go start this, now I'm starting this, now I'm starting this, and they say you can't be. You said you can't be great at everything. I never believe that personally. I feel like I can be great at everything, or at least greater than most at everything. It really comes down to the time that you are really able to put into something. Now, if you're just throwing stuff against the wall and thinking it's going to stick, now that's just what I would call, just being an idiot. But at the end of the day, like, if you're actually putting your time in on specific things, and once you look back on it, you can see the trail of time put in on specific things. Greatness is just time and effort on specific tasks. So, yeah.
All right. So you've already said you're not the golden child because you had the problem, the injury and things fell apart. What's something that you grabbed onto, one of them shiny objects that you grabbed onto in business that you were like, yeah, and then it just went.
Oh man, there's a lot of those. So, but I think it's good. It's good to fail fast. It's good to fail fast. That's one of my models, actually, is fail fast, because now I know what I need to do and what I don't need to do, right? From that perspective. So I would say my first business I even started was a failure right out the gate. I thought the moving day was a shiny object. You know what I'm saying? And people told me right away, that's not where you need to go. That's not what you need to do. There's been a lot of things I've tried, and as soon as I got out there, somebody said, that's not it. That's this way. That's not it. It's this way type situation. So, And now I'm starting real estate, and I'm getting into some real estate investing and things of that nature. And if I'm not failing, then I feel like I'm heading down the right path. But as soon as I fail, I know that I can redirect. But if you don't put yourself out there to at least go fail, then you really don't know. You have to define that, clear the mud out the water. So yeah, I think there's a lot of shiny objects I done chased that's been devastating.
Could you talk some about your like ideation process as you start to look down this entrepreneurial path? Because, like you said, you kind of forced your hand a little bit into it.
Yeah.
But now that you're in it, you got the gears turning. How do you see that path going? What's your future in entrepreneurship? I guess.
Yeah. So, like I said, I started off in move-in days. I got directed to like actually doing the physical work of turning units. After I did work of turning units for like 4 or 5 years, I started a tech company geared around making that process better for managing vendors. So EZOS is a platform for property managers to better manage contracted vendors on their site. Mm-hmm. So that specifically was figured out when I was doing that work on the site. And now, that company is a large company. This company is still going on. We more so specifically do security guard services over here. And I'm starting to work on technology over there at that standpoint as well. So I think, my father always told me that if you're going to create a business, you need to be close to it. Like there's a lot of opportunity, but you usually find the most value in your ideas when you're close to whatever the problem is and the solvent that you're trying to solve in that situation. So if you're just an entrepreneur and you're like looking at Google trying to see what are the top 25 best businesses to start in 2023, saying usually those things don't work out. Like they're good, like maybe for a side hustle or something like that. But if you're really going to create a sustaining business, it usually comes from looking around at how things are that you're currently in and how you can make them better.
You said something earlier when we were first getting the conversation going, that part of becoming an entrepreneur was to be able to have your time, control your time. When did you realize you didn't control your time, and then how'd you get that back?
Oh man. So what I realized was that, and I kind of talked about it earlier, but I was doing a lot of training, right? I was training. I rarely think people outwork me. I know people work hard, but I rarely think people outwork me. And, I was putting in 3 a days, 2 a days. I'm out here going extra hard. I have no job. I know that there's people here that are getting paid that I know for a fact I'm better than, that type of situation. And it wasn't my decision. I had no bearing on anything going on out there. I mean, I wrote letters, we called teams, we did everything. And at the end of the day, it's not my decision. And essentially the time that I'm putting in to something to not be up to me, I just felt was way too much to not see our ROI, return on investment. So when I noticed that, I said, everything I do going forward, I got to be able to have a direct hand on the return on investment. So both of my companies now, like I have a direct hand on every single dollar that's came into the company, right? And from that, whatever comes from that, whether it's acquisition, whether it's selling companies, all those different types of things that we have positions of doing, I think that, the time that I've done and spent on these businesses is where I think my time is at. And I see that return. So I'm still working 80 hours a week now. So technically I don't really have time, but at the same time, I just need to see the value. If I don't see the value, if I can't wake up and have a passion or something that I'm pursuing, you don't get the same chase.
How have you been able to keep that fire going and keep that energy working at that level? Because I think that's really what you're hitting at there. Yeah. Part 2 of your question, I guess, Dad, is a lot of people get into entrepreneurship because they want to control their schedule, and then their schedule is just the business, and it's almost worse than they were off in the first place. Yeah. You can do that for a while. You need to do that for a while as an entrepreneur, but it reaches a point where the wheels start to fall off. Yeah. How have you been able to maintain for so long?
I think my wheels fall off every couple of weeks. Honestly, I had to talk myself.
How do you put it back on then?
Yeah, I had to talk myself off the cliff Friday. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just part of it. And who's to say that you don't want to do something else going forward? But at the end of the day, like as long as I can see whatever it is that I'm doing, I just want to wake up and be passionate about it. Like if I can't wake up and be passionate about it, then it's not for me. I gotta have that feeling. I always try to be the chase. I try to always be the chase that wakes up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. and starts to run because he's trying to chase the NFL, right? Like if I'm not that version of me, then I'm not at my best self. So whatever that is that's motivating me to wake up and say, all right, the devil needs to be scared that my feet hit the ground. Like that's what I need to do. That's what I need to be at.
What's your purpose then? You have to be passionate about it. And I'll give you my snippet of here's how all the businesses that you run now, have started, and will start in the future. Here's how they all tie together, and that's your purpose. Yeah. So, what is your purpose?
Well, my purpose has always been to create jobs, to create opportunity, and have impact. So that has always been my purpose. That's why the name Helping Hand was the first name of my company. Was the idea that I could provide job opportunities to people that in my community looked a lot like me, and they looked like a lot of my friends, families, and cousins, and they were struggling to find opportunities. And one of the things I always tell people is like, when I first started that company, I wanted to figure out, was it me? Was it the system? Was it the University of the United States, or was it, you guys are not good workers? What is it type of situation? And I realized that some of them weren't good workers at the end of the day. Like I had to let go of a lot of people that I created my first companies for. But at the end of the day, like we've created thousands and thousands of jobs across the country. And I never take that for granted on, kind of the impact that we've had from that standpoint. So that's always been my purpose, was to be able to have impact on the community.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose. Are you tired of dealing with the cost of bad leadership? It's time to make a change. The Green Beret Leadership Program is your key to unlocking the full potential of your team. By developing leaders in your business, you'll get a proactive and responsible team that embraces challenges, takes calculated risks, and takes action without constant supervision. Developing great leaders can take a lot of time and energy, and that's why businesses tend to opt for the trial by fire and school of hard knocks path to leadership. The truth is that wastes time and money, and it puts a lot of extra stress on your leadership team and the rest of the team. Poor leadership drives away quality talent, and the longer you wait to fix the problem, the more talent you're going to wind up losing. With the Green Beret Leadership Program, you can use the battle-tested leadership principles of the Green Berets to develop great leaders in your team faster with the school of hard knocks. You'll see changes in just a few short weeks. The longer you wait to take action, the more damage poor leadership can do to your business. Learn more about the impact GBLP can have on your business and schedule your free coaching call with your Green Beret coach, Otis McGregor, now at findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP, or click the link in the description below. Don't leave your team to struggle on their own. Give them the tools they need to be great. One thing, thinking back to your time in the NFL, I'm curious what kind of lessons you could pull from. Like, it's just one of those, whenever we have people on, it's like, that's a huge organization, just the NFL as a whole. A team is a huge organization, a huge team. Like, that's a very different environment than a lot of other places. Yeah. What kind of lessons do you pull from, like, the leadership structure, the way business is done, little things like that you apply now?
Everything, honestly. I've already talked about probably three of them. Like, being on time, obviously. Mm-hmm. Then I talked about, like, always recruiting people, regardless of how good the current people are, always recruiting. But one thing I probably haven't touched on is that mistakes matter. Like, mistakes matter at the end of the day. Mm. Like, we used to have what we call MEs, which is mental errors, that was graded on a daily basis. And it's okay to make, like physical mistakes where you're just not physical enough or you're not strong enough, fast enough. Those are the type of things. But being out of position, or not knowing the plays, or in cover 3 when you're supposed to be in cover 2, like those things are all avoidable, right? So I think that a lot of people want grace for bad work or bad service, and I think that it's almost become a culture where a lot of people expect handouts from that perspective. But at the end of the day, you got to be held accountable for what's put on tape. And that's just how I've been, brought up.
That's great. And I'd like to explore that a little bit because actually Reggie said the same. Our friend Reggie Walker, when he was on the show, said something almost, I don't remember if he called it ME, but man, he talked about something exactly like that when he was playing. And how do you handle that now? You got Bubba that shows up and he's like, boss, I screwed up. In NFL, those sort of things, it's like, go, you're gone. So what do you do about that now in business? Because it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit different. I don't think I have as quick of a trigger. I don't pay people millions of dollars either.
That helps.
Okay.
So if the salaries was a little higher, we might have a quicker leash on that type of situation. But from my perspective, I would say that always put things into place to have gradable, gradable ways of looking at people's performance. And I think if you don't put in ways to grade, then you're just going about it, just saying, all right, I think we're doing good. I like this person. I think they're doing great. That type of situation. So I'm always putting in grading systems, whether it's for somebody that's doing demos, somebody that's doing sales calls. I want to see, how does that compare to, others on the team in that way. So, some type of grading service, some type of criteria from that standpoint to do that. Also, when it's came up previously and somebody's like, hey, so-and-so did this, so-and-so did that. I'm like, all right, I'll take that into account from that perspective. I'll talk to so-and-so. And I think, the thing that I've learned with dealing with all these different employees from both of my companies is like, you got to talk to people and you got to get their side of everything that happened from that perspective, right? And if you don't get their side of everything, you never really know the true story. So I really get mad at some of my middle management when I say, did you talk to him though? No, I haven't talked to him, but this is what the situation is. I know this. And I'm like, but you still haven't got to the source of the situation and gotten his explanation or her explanation of why the situation happened. So I think it's a lot more lenient than the NFL than my current system, but it's still something in place that you have to hold people accountable.
Oh, I love that. And it's funny because, we're talking about like the film and the mental errors and all of that. That's one of the biggest things, I do with rugby, and I have coaches who did with rugby. It's like, can you freeze it? All right. Hey, Chase, I know you're about to miss this tackle, but what did you see? And it's like doing those little things just because it shows you what they're actually thinking, and it can help to rework the processes so they can be successful next time.
Exactly.
I think it's an interesting thing, really both your businesses, but specifically with Helping Hand, that one of the hardest things is to provide a good outcome every single time when you don't have control over the outcome. Now, your team has control over the outcome, but you're not in there making sure that every room is dusted before move-in day and all those kind of things. Yeah. How do you control that outcome for the business so that you're always, keeping those clients?
Yeah. So I think it's less about the outcome and more so about how you respond to when it's not good. I think that's really what it came down to for me, is that like, I know we're probably going to get like 25 to 30%. Like cleaning is so subjective, right? It's relative to anybody. Like, so you think something's clean one way, I think something's clean one way. And so you already know that that's going to be, you're going to have to come back and do something else again. So what I've learned is that, like, if your client is, saying that, hey, you're not doing this well, or you're not doing this well, this product is not good, it's not product good, and say, okay, how do I fix it? And I go fix it and go on to the next thing from that standpoint. And really not pushing back and being mad about like why they believe the product is bad in any form or fashion is probably the best thing that you can do. And one thing I do talk about is, like, as an entrepreneur, I try to say I'm working for myself, but I'm not working for myself. I work for all my clients. That's really what I am. You know what I'm saying? So the freedom is all based on how good the product is going.
How do you find the right people? Because that's still a major problem in a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
Is sometimes it's just getting somebody to freaking show up for work.
Yeah.
And then the next step of that is getting the right fit, because it costs a lot of money every time you got to find somebody else. Yeah. What just cover some of that process that you were using in your business.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've probably hired in the thousands, honestly. Yeah, like you said, the people that we're hiring, the first thing we try to do is make sure somebody shows up. You show up, that's checkbox one for us from that standpoint. And a lot of people don't get that checkbox. So it's not something to be, saying light about. Like if you show up, like you can't, I feel sorry for the people that can't even show up from that perspective. But essentially, like the actual technologies, we use like the Indeeds and the ZipRecruiters and things of that nature, and do a lot of those different types of hiring practices. And like I said, I think the big thing that we've come down to is the fact of, like I said at the very beginning, somebody's always out there trying out for Tom Brady's job on Tuesday in the NFL. And we use that same practice point. So I always tell my team, like, if we have an issue with somebody on any of our sites, who is our backup? And most of the time they're like, we don't have a backup, but we will go to the ZipRecruiter and Indeed or whatever and start hiring some new people. But I'm like, you guys aren't implementing the process of maintaining a good idea of who is out there and who is available. I think that's a very important tool that a lot of people say we don't have enough time to do this, but I think that actually gives you your most return when you look at it from a perspective of delivering a good product. Is always making sure you have the best people that you possibly can field.
It's a proactive process once you get that going too. Like as you're talking that through, it's hard to get it going. It takes effort to keep that going. Yeah. But then it's, the couple hours a week. And then when you do need to replace somebody, you've got it ready to go. So you got to be proactive with the process. Exactly. I love that.
Yeah, we always refer to it because some of the businesses I've worked for in the past, we just refer to it as the bench. I've got 3 or 4 people that, they're doing something else, but if that spot opens up or we need to grow in that direction, that's the person I'm calling first. Yeah. So
I think it also keeps your starters playing better, right? Like if they know that you are out there looking for people potentially to take this position, they perform at a higher level. That's the same thing that used to happen for me in football. I see somebody out there doing back pedals and stuff like that, then I'm out there. I know I got to have a good practice today from that standpoint. Today is not the day to have a bad practice. From that standpoint. So right. I think it also increases the level of your team that's out there.
100%. Yeah.
No, I'm just thinking about, I'm driving by that snowy day in Kentucky and I look out there and it's like, oh crap. I better pick it up tomorrow because Chase is out there. That's what was going through my head is like, dang. Yeah. So what's more fun for you? The startup or the growth of the business?
Wow. I think probably the startup, honestly. The growth. Yeah. The growth is it's a lot of different politics in the growth, right? Especially if you're raising capital and things of that nature. It's always there's something into it, the growth. Like we're 10 years into my helping hands, but I still remember the passion of the first few days where you have no clients and you get an email back from somebody and you're fist pumping. And you know what I'm saying? And you're like, yes. You know what I'm saying? Nothing's happened, nothing's closed, but those days are still awesome. And still to this day, when I get a big email back from a client, I still get that excitement of yes. You know what I'm saying? So I would probably say the startup, creating and getting things off the ground, I think is one of my strongest suits.
Awesome. Yeah. It reminds me of my best friend Camden's Uncle Ben, and he is Mr. He's learned to control the shiny object, but boy, he builds it up and he's like, dang, this ain't any fun anymore. I mean, because it's successful. It's too easy now is the way he puts it. So, yeah, I know that feeling, man. So many great metaphors I've heard over my life. Mom was just here, and good grief, the crazy Southern lady metaphors that she's got. But I like, and I feel almost like it needs to be a little poster above my door. It is the devil better be afraid that I'm awake now, and I'm going. I love that, and that's it. That's a good one. Look out, devil, because here I come. Yeah. And that goes back to my time in the in the special forces too, because there's a lot of that sort of attitude going on.
Yeah.
Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
I got to make this joke because you mentioned other mama there and her southern phrases. I'm looking out the window right now, and the devil is beating his wife. If y'all know what that means, it's sunny, but it's raining outside. That's what I had to get that out there. But, no, actually, mine was from the same part of the conversation. You know, Chase, when you were talking about that, it wasn't this like desire to go be an NFL athlete. It wasn't desire to go be great. It was desire to be the best version of yourself. Yeah. And that is, like, when you talk performance, that is such a smart way of looking at it. Because it's not about the goal, it's about you. And when you think about it like that, then when the goal shifts, it doesn't matter because you're still the same. You're still constant. You're focusing on that. You're focused on the progress and the effort. And that is the best way to do it. So I love the way you put that.
That's awesome. Chase,
how about you, man? What'd you learn?
So it actually came in something that I said on the podcast, like show up. Show up. Mm-hmm. I think showing up is so underrated because a lot of people, it's easy for them to show up. But at the end of the day, you can't even get an opportunity at greatness if you don't show up to the start date, whatever your date is, whatever you're supposed to be. Show up and then let the chips fall where they may. But they can't fall if you're not there. So that's what I would say I learned.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Chase, how do folks find you, see what you got going on next?
Yeah, so you can find me. I'm on all social medias at Chase Minnifield. Obviously, my website's www.ezos.co. Our Helping Hand site, www.helpinghandllc.net. I do have a book out called Build a Beast, and it is on Amazon and audiobook. So if anybody wants to look that up, that's cool too. So yeah, we're out there.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, hey, Chase, this has been great. We really appreciate you taking some time to hang out with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Cam and Otis Show. And a special thanks to our guest, Chase Minnifield, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at The Cam and Otis Show. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to share with other lifelong learners in your tribe so they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes is available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.